So before I start today's video, I just want to say thank you guys so much for 30 subscribers. Obviously, that's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's definitely a start, and I'm very excited about it. Also want to point out that I did get a new microphone and pop filter, which you'll probably be able to tell when I start pronunciating words that have pop or the letter P, things like that. You could probably tell with my old mic, you could you'd get a little bit of static when the pops would come in, but with this, it should be good. And then, of course, I also did get a new webcam. You can probably tell the webcam quality is a little bit better. But today we are going to be discussing the most recent 2K, or the December 30th 2K that took place approximately, took place 3 days ago and then ended yesterday. And we are going to start, I guess we can start at top 16 to try and break this down for us. Let me just pull up the top 16. And I won't go all the way through, but I'll just say kind of the notable things. So Evil Geniuses gets another 9th through 16th, as well as Lightning Pandas. Luminosity and Echo Fox both also finish in that 9 to 16th range. And all of these teams have done decent in this tournament, I think. Overall, Luminosity, I think, underperforms a little bit. Echo Fox, both of them as well, probably an underperformance on their part. But Evil Geniuses and Lightning Pandas, that's kind of where I would expect them to be based on the current results that we've seen so far. But we're not going to talk too much about them. I'm going to kind of try to keep this video a little bit shorter, at least talking about teams outside of the top kind of 3 or 4 of this tournament. So I'll start 5th through 8th, and of course 5th through 8th was, to start the team going as Org Needed, which was Havoc, Lethal, BL Fire, and Mosh. And this team, it's the Forma Era team basically, or excuse me, no, it's not the Forma Era team. The Forma Era team is Dido and Rallied's team. This team is Havoc from Era left and then made this team. Anyway, point is, this team did fairly well. Obviously, they very much overperformed to the standard that you would probably hold them at. And I think that they probably realistically won't repeat this kind of performance, but I think it's a very good performance nonetheless from them. And it obviously helps them a lot with pro points. There's so many teams on the bubble right now. And especially with a team like this that has had awful performances at most of the other 2Ks and LAN events, and their pro points combined, I'm not sure exactly where they sit, but I'm assuming they're fairly far down the food chain as far as pro points. I would assume somewhere between 15 and 20 in that total pro point range. So this obviously helps them a lot for that, but this also helps them, kind of gives them a chance if they have another overperformance at CWL New Orleans, and they actually can, end up making the Pro League, which would be very surprising again, but we've seen, I think, some crazier things at Call of Duty events than a team like this getting, top 8 or something of that matter. But we'll move on. The other 3 teams are a little bit more noteworthy. E United finishes 5th through 8th. Team Envious finishes 5th through 8th. And Optic Gaming also finishes 5th through 8th. And so, to quickly go over Team Envious and E United, I didn't really catch too much of E United. I know they got reverse sweeped by FaZe, which, again, I didn't really get to see any of the matches, unfortunately, so I can't speak too much on that series specifically. But I know I saw on Twitter that a lot of questions were coming up again about the consistency and about why Clayster isn't running an AR and things like that. And I've kind of given up the hope that they are going to make that change to Clayster being a full-time AR. I really do think that this event or this game is just going to be Clayster running an AR with this team until something changes in the team, or eventually they just have a huge kind of breaking point, which I'm not even sure will happen. But if it does, then I think we will finally get to see Clayster on an AR, which is kind of what we've been hoping for. But besides United, there was also Team Envious, like I said, who they lost to Ghost Gaming. They lost 3-2, and I know they were winning that series 2-1, so not exactly a reverse sweep, but Ghost Gaming has to clutch up in that series to win it. And Team Envious, again, they're another one of those teams that has kind of been railed by inconsistencies. I didn't really watch any of the Ghost Gaming versus Team Envious matchup either, but I would assume that Team Envious probably had some good performances from Slasher, probably some fairly inconsistent performances from Classic, and then Hue Contempt were probably right around that 1.0 mark. That seems to be the consistent theme with this team, and I think they probably just kind of choked that series away against Ghost. I would assume that they really want another shot at that one, and that they would probably win it if they played it a second time. But then the one that's really interesting to talk about in 5th through 8th is, of course, Optic, because they did lose to, spoiler warning, the eventual champions, Rise Nation, 3-1. And I'm not going to touch too much on Optic because I know I kind of have been kind of beating a dead bush with Optic. I think that going into CWL Nola, they're still the favorites. I think their ego got kind of the best of them at Dallas, and I think this, fairly similar to what Optic complained about with the inconsistencies of online against E United. I think we'll probably see them complain against inconsistencies online with the Rise Nation series, and then they'll go into NOLA, say that they should win the event, and they should be expected to win the event, and yeah, we'll see what happens at the event. I mean, that's basically all I can really say about them for right now. But then we'll move into 3rd, 4th, which of course 3rd, 4th is FaZe Clan and Ghost Gaming, and Ghost Gaming of course lost to Rise Nation, and FaZe Clan lost to Team Caliber, wait, is that right? No, I don't think, I might have said that backwards. I actually don't even remember what way I said it now. Well, that is embarrassing, but anyway, doesn't matter. So Ghost Gaming and FaZe Clan, they get 3rd and 4th. They lose to TK and they lose to Rise. And again, I'm not really going to touch too much on these two teams. Ghost Gaming, I don't really see them recreating this performance on a LAN environment. I mean, they were just awful at CWL Dallas, and they've had decent performances all year in the 2K. So unless they have an outstanding performance at CWL Nola, I think it's kind of time to labeling this team as probably some onliners in some sort of degree. I mean, obviously all these players have had great performances on LAN at one point or another, in one title or another, but I think just in this game specifically, they just don't seem to have it on LAN, and I don't think they will at this upcoming LAN either, but of course we will see how the results play out when the event does come. And then FaZe Clan, another good performance for them. They finally break that kind of T32 online performance in the 2Ks. They ended up, of course, getting 3rd, 4th, like I said, and they performed decent. Obviously, this is kind of right where I kind of expected them. Maybe a little bit of an overperformance. I think they're more of a 5th through 8th team overall in this game, but I think this lineup definitely has the potential to make some top 4 placings. Of course, they already made one at Dallas, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make another one at NOLA, but I think overall 5th or 8th is probably where I'd put them. But again, a little bit overperformance, but pretty good result overall, and kind of the result that they probably deserved based on the struggles they've had online previously. And then to get into the number 1 and number 2 teams in this whole 2K, it was Rise Nation and it was Team Caliber. And Team Caliber, obviously, when you watch Team Caliber play, it's pretty obvious that they are still one of the best teams in the game. Their teamwork seems to be still at an all-time high, and this team, is again one of the favorites going into CWL Nola, with right up there with Optic Gaming. I think I'd still put Team Caliber as the 2nd best team in all of Call of Duty, despite this loss, and I think this is more of an overperformance from Rise than it is necessarily a bad performance by TK. But we'll see what happens. Of course, TK still, I think, has a lot of pressure to overperform again at CWL New Orleans. And when I say overperform, I just mean, get 1st place instead of 2nd, where I would have projected them, right? So, like, getting an overperformance by winning the event, in some cases, I guess you wouldn't really consider that an overperformance, but by I guess my standards, it is an overperformance in some way. But Team Caliber, again, they get second place. And then this Rise Nation team is the team I wanted to spend the most time talking about, because they ended up winning the whole event, or the whole tournament, excuse me, not event. And basically, this Rise Nation team has just formed, like a few days before, at least publicly a few days before the 2K. I'm sure they had maybe played some, games in private, obviously testing out, running scrims to make sure that their team is good, things like that. But publicly, they have only been released for a few days, and they have made, a great start. It's been a great start for their team, obviously. They get first place in the first tournament that they play, online or LAN. And watching this team play, the dynamic seems to be very TK-esque. I saw Looney obviously playing really good with an SMG, but the main kind of thing that I saw from this Rise Nation team was Methods really outshining Kenny kind of in the series as a whole with the SMG. I think Methods put up really, really good performances in most of the 4 matches, or probably in all 4, I would say, generally, unless I'm not considering an outlier. But Methods was a huge part of the success that this Rise Nation team had, and it's going to be a big question to see if he can do that on LAN. I'm not sure that he can, just because we haven't really seen him consistently do this, at least not in previous titles. In this title, he has been really good. I will give him the credit there and say that Methods has performed very well in this game specifically, but overall, in the past 4 titles probably, I wouldn't say he's been one of the top SMG players. So if he can perform well at this event, I think that does kind of put him back into that notable SMG player kind of category, where when you're talking about X factors at a tournament, or you're talking about potential MVPs, if Rise Nation is to win the event, Methods becomes the number 1 player that you talk about, versus probably before I would have said Looney, just because he's usually a very consistent sub. And of course I would have said Aqua probably before that, but of course now he's on Echo Fox. But this event, or this tournament, excuse me, for Rise, it's hard to read into too much, because of course it's an online event, and it's not got quite the same, prestige as a LAN event. It's always going to have its inconsistencies with online play. That's just how online play goes. But overall, I would say that this team could make a huge splash at CWL Nola. I'm actually gonna say that I'm kind of favoring them to do well. I think kind of something that we saw and I spoke about with E United is that, no matter how bad you do in most tournaments, or if you constantly are failed by inconsistencies or things like that, if you actually win a whole 2K, or win a whole LAN event, you are a good team in my opinion. You don't have to perform well at every event to be considered a really good team. You have to perform admirably, right? You have to perform top 8 consistently, top 16 in some cases to be considered a really good team. Obviously, in the case of United, it was when we were talking about all these 2Ks, they kept, falling short in some of the 2Ks, not getting top 4, sometimes not even getting top 8, and then they just win one, right? Just out of nowhere. They beat Optic in a best of 5, right? So Rise Nation is the same kind of way for me, where the fact that they can the fact that they've won any sort of high competitive tournament shows to me that they can be a top team. The question is now, can they do it on LAN against Team Caliber, against Optic? Because of course, they beat both of these teams in this tournament. I mean, that is an amazing, kind of showing in its own, online or LAN. Beating Optic and beating TK in best of 5s is nothing to joke about. And I think if you are a Rise Nation fan, or if you're a fan of competitive Call of Duty, you should be very, very excited about these two teams going forward. And more importantly, I think we're going to have a really good CWL New Orleans event, because we've just added another team that is kind of inching its way towards top 4, moving forward into Pro League and onward for the rest of the Call of Duty World War II season.